It's not about politics, it's about football.
This is a simple game.
We're going to run the ball, and we're going to pass the ball. He's just going to play football, really.
How good of a football player are you?
I just get in and try to spin it. That's all.
I just love the game.
It really is the best time of the year.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to It's Just Football. Trevor Sikkema here with you with our special guest, Steve Palazzolo, who's filling in for Renner's seat. You guys noticed I had to jack my seat all the way up today to make sure that I didn't look
Don't lie to the people here.
Extremely short. Normally the seat's like down here with Renner.
That's reality.
But no. I gotta meet you at eye level. We've got to have these conversations man to man because there's so much to talk about as we were recapping Week 18, the regular season finale in the NFL. Steve, how you feeling this morning, my friend?
I'm doing great. Just did 2.5 hours of PFF NFL podcast, so great to be here on It's Just Football.
So you're warmed up.
Oh yeah, ready to go.
You're ready for the crazy takes now. Those were the logical takes.
Lukewarm.
Okay, no. You and Sam talk about things. You get to the bottom of things logically. It's such a long podcast. You figure things out. This one, fire from the hip, my guy.
Perfect.
Fire from the hip on this show. That's what we want here.
I'm ready.
Shout out to everybody who's watching. Shout out to Trevor Joseph, who was the chat champ from last week. Appreciate you guys tuning in. And man, we got so much stuff to get to. Obviously, we're going to talk about the playoff picture as it got finalized. We're going to talk about what was the results of yesterday's games. Got the draft order finalized as well. That's definitely going to come up into some conversation. So it's going to be a lot of good stuff. Let's get the production portal guys in here to start the show. Quinn, Eli, Sav, how are we feeling this morning, my friends?
Good, man. Can't believe the regular season's over.
I know. Now it's on to postseason play for your Bengals.
I know.
Our Bengals.
Can't imagine being a fan of a team that isn't playing in the postseason, you know?
Damn. I can't
I don't even remember what that's like.
Who is your team? Who's your favorite team?
I don't have one.
You don't have a team?
No.
You're
Unbiased
fan
NFL.
Fan of the sport. Fan of the sport. You're
Yeah.
who's the guy with just?
I'm Rob Lowe. NFL.
Rob Lowe. Yeah.
I root for the Shield. I'm just rooting for football here. So that's it.
Friends, family, football. That's what Steve is all about. Do we have a question of the day?
We sure do.
Warmed up a little bit here.
We sure do. Speaking of the Bengals,
Yes.
Jamar Chase is the fourth.
Hey,
listen, we are getting dangerously low on question of the day material, so I'm grasping at straws.
Okay.
But this is actually, I think this is a decent question.
Okay.
Jamar Chase became the fourth player in NFL history with at least 80 receptions and 1,000 receiving yards in each of his first two seasons. Who are the other three?
Ooh. Okay. Mike Evans has to be one, right? Because he's
80 receptions though.
80's a lot.
He must have had some in the 70s. I don't think Randy Moss had that many receptions.
Yeah, Randy just had a ton of explosives.
He was more low volume. Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, so Jefferson's one for sure.
Joe Burrow, product of the system at LSU.
Wow. Maybe it's not Evans. You're right. I don't think 80 receptions. I don't think he's hit 80 receptions in both those.
Marvin Harrison, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce. I'm just thinking of the consistent guys.
Yeah.
When do we need an answer for this?
End of the show.
End of the show.
At the
We got
end of the
some time.
show. I like the Justin Jefferson's call. Let's see if the
Jefferson has to be in there.
Ooh, people are saying OBJ, Odell. That could be.
He could be in there. Julio? No, Julio started slow, I believe.
I don't think he started that fast, yeah.
Antonio Brown?
No, Antonio Brown started slow.
He started slow too, yeah.
Yeah. He had those like monster years once he was like 3-4 years in, but I think he started slow too.
I think OBJ might be a good call.
Oh, yeah, OBJ is a good call.
AJ Green could be a good call from the chat. Michael Thomas.
Ooh, yeah.
That could be the right one.
Some Michael Thomas love.
We got some Cardinals. Larry Fitzgerald, Inquan. I think Bolden could be one of them.
Bolden might be one of them.
He was high volume right out of the gate.
So normally what Mike and I will do with this is we'll realize that Quinn's the one who's asking the question. So the answer could involve another Cincinnati Bengal.
Chris Collinsworth.
Somebody also said, well, yeah, we could just go Chris just because we should.
It's Carl Pickens, Chris Collinsworth. It's all Bengals. Perfect.
That'd be a real company man. All right, we got at least Justin Jefferson. We'll finalize the answer at the end of the show, but that's a good one to get things started off for you guys. Well, today is, of course, Monday, and the Monday after the regular season finale is nicknamed Black Monday for the firings of a lot of general managers and head coaches. We've got one confirmed that we know of. Lovie Smith out with the Houston Texans, which is absolutely hilarious because the last game that he coached 4th and 20, conversion for a touchdown, and then a 2-point conversion to lose them the number 1 overall pick, Steve. Just thoughts of Lovie Smith getting canned in Houston. Looks like Nick Caserio is going to stay at GM, but any initial thoughts there?
I mean, Nick Caserio's had 2 years in Houston as the GM. They had David Culley as a one-year coach, Lovie Smith as a 1-year coach. No offense to Lovie, but I think when he was hired, people were like, why? You know, is this a stopgap type of coach? I'm not that surprised that it happened. At the same time, Lovie Smith did a good job. I mean, the roster's terrible. It's the worst roster in the NFL. They played hard. They played tight against good teams. And they won yesterday. Now, were they not supposed to win? Maybe. May have cost them the number 1 overall pick. Maybe that's part of the whole thing. But I think Lovie Smith did his job as well as he possibly could. And I also think the Texans had this in mind, that they're going somewhere else.
Yeah. No, it is a little bit strange because you figure you just would have stuck with Culley if that was the case, if you weren't really going to give Lovie Smith a shot. Because I think there was reports yesterday of like, oh, you know, Lovie Smith could be playing his way into a second season, but how would it have gotten better than what happened yesterday and him not getting a second season? You know, so it just feels like that was the case all along. Feels like a pretty dishonest head coaching position there with Houston and bringing him on and everything. But it looks like Caserio is going to stay. We got a report. Jordan Schultz tweeted out earlier that Steve Keim is out in Arizona as the general manager there. He's been the general manager since, 2013? 2014. He's been the general manager for a while there in Arizona. Schultz is the only report that we have right now, but he was tweeting it out that it was going to be official. Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero tweeted yesterday that it was likely that this was going to happen, so it's not like this is totally out of nowhere. But Keim being out in Arizona, what do you think about this?
I mean, so the Cardinals are about to pick 3rd. You have Kyler Murray out for a significant part of next year with the ACL. It is a rough situation in Arizona. It does feel like a time to maybe even punt on next season, right? Whole new regime. And you don't know when Kyler's going to come back.
Right.
The whole roster needs help. I think the whole defensive backfield needs help. J.J. Watt's still one of their best players. He's about to retire. And I think they're going to have decisions to make on Cliff Kingsbury. An uneven run from Cliff Kingsbury. It was getting better every year. And then this year, even when Kyler was healthy, it was not so good.
Yeah, and that's a really good point in Arizona. Like, if you go into next season thinking that it's a make-or-break year for even like the head coach, the general manager, anybody involved, with Kyler not playing half the season, how do you even judge that? So if you're going to move on from somebody who's a decision maker, especially at the GM position, you'd rather do it now. You'd rather get a new guy in there and say, hey, next year we understand what the stipulations are. So like you said, we're starting fresh. There's an actual plan there. So hopefully that's what Arizona is thinking. But this might be the magic hour where we get some news that really starts to break. So if it breaks here on this show, we'll react to it live as we go through a lot of the games and what we saw yesterday. But let's refresh the timeline. We like to do this on a Monday morning. We like to get to some of our favorite social clips that we saw from yesterday. Well, this one's not from yesterday. This one's actually from Saturday. This is from when the Jacksonville Jaguars clinched the AFC South in a playoff spot. Their mascot, who has been all over social media for a lot of different reasons this year. Steve, I don't know if you saw this one, but got a little bit wet afterwards with the celebration. I think we got the video for you.
Oh, love it. That place was electric.
The straight
Jacksonville.
belly flop. That hurt. And you know what? That's commitment. You know that was commitment to it. He didn't cannonball. He didn't just, jump in and just kind of like flop in. That was a full smack of the chest and a belly flop to celebrate.
The Jags are back, right? I mean, all across the board, the Jags are back. You asked me where my fandom is. It's the 90s Jaguars. I lied.
I'm
a
glad
Mark
you dropped
Brunell
that in because
Jaguar.
you love dropping Jaguars nuggets.
Always Jags nuggets. And they're back, baby. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is at least the second best quarterback in franchise history behind Mark Brunell. It's going well.
Yeah.
And the place was electric on Saturday night for a playoff atmosphere.
It was beautiful. And then we get to see it again, obviously, this upcoming weekend with them hosting a playoff game. Next one, this is an elite celebration. Truly elite celebration. I knew that we were going to get this in the show. Quinn, I knew you were going to put it in. Maybe Eli put it in. One of you was going to put this one in. It was after Joe Mixon scored. A little bit of a shot to the NFL and what happened on Friday with them kind of changing the playoff stipulations. But I think we got the video for this one as well. This is a good one. Mixon scores, gives the coin flip, and then kicks it out of there. So that's obviously in reference to the NFL changing some of the playoff stipulations because of what happened in Cincinnati with the Bengals and the Bills last week, and basically said, hey, Cincinnati, you're going to be AFC North champs no matter what. you might not host a playoff game. You still need to beat the Ravens for that to be the case. Obviously, the Bengals weren't very happy about that, but that celebration was I would like a creative little shot at the NFL.
The Bengals got the worst deal out of all the stuff
Totally.
in the NFL. The NFL was in a tough spot.
Yes.
But they got the worst end of the deal. There should actually be a coin flip for the second round here, Bills and Bengals, right? If you're using the same logic. That's where my Cincinnati friends around here, the whole city's lit up orange. It's playoff time here in Cincinnati, and the people are upset because the Bengals got the raw end of the deal. And Ocho Cinco said, yeah, he's gonna pick up the tab if there's any sort of fine for Joe Mixon here.
Oh, wow. I didn't see
Ocho
that.
knows. Ocho knows what a good celebration is.
Ocho does know what he gets. Honestly, I echo what you said at the beginning. It was a tough situation that the NFL were in. They were trying to give more of a detailed what could happen on top of the rule book that already existed when they kind of came out with the new rules. I actually would have been fine with everything as long as they would have done the coin flip or the neutral site game if the Bengals and the Bills meet in the second round. If they would have just
same logic,
if they would have just done that, even if you would have kept the NFC North stuff and hosting the first round of the playoff game, even if you would have kept that the same, I would have been okay with it as long as you would have kept it the same for the second round. But that's the part that I think Bengals fans have a big reason to have a gripe about. But they won anyway, so they're going to host next week no matter what. We got to go back to Jacksonville for this one. Maybe we did this one a little bit out of order, but we were talking about this one a little bit before the show. You said it was electric in Jacksonville.
For most people. You
got to see this one too. This is a good one here. Maybe not so electric for everybody. Maybe not so electric for Jack's owner Shad Khan.
I think he's visualizing a touchdown.
Yeah, closing his eyes. He's meditating. He's visualizing them winning the game. And then waking up and there it is.
This was right before they scored. He had something. He was calling it a play or something. Shad was focused.
That looks like the gif of the guy who's just like asleep and then he just like hears everybody else cheering, so he gets up to cheer. But obviously, we're just having fun. Congrats to Shad and the rest of the Jags organization. Last one, a little speculation for this one. Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers after the game. I don't know if you saw this one or not, but Jameson Williams comes up to him, Detroit Lions wide receiver, and he goes, "Hey man, let me get the jersey." And Aaron Rodgers goes, "I think I got to keep this one." So I think we've got the video for it. I think you guys could hear it yourselves. I got to hold on to this one. Steve, was this Aaron Rodgers' last game as a Packer, and he wants to hold on to the jersey?
This is ridiculous. Stop for a second and think about your Twitter timeline last night and watching Aaron Rodgers and everybody on Twitter is like, "Oh, Aaron won't give his jersey up," and he's hugging Randall Cobb and he's soaking this one in. Your Twitter timeline, my Twitter timeline thought that they know what's happening in Aaron Rodgers' head. Mm-hmm. You have no clue what's happening in Aaron Rodgers' head. You have no idea. He probably just wants his jersey. He just didn't save a jersey all year. He just wants the last one. You have no idea what Aaron Rodgers is thinking.
Or he could be retiring. He doesn't want to give up his last jersey that he played at Lambeau Field.
No chance.
No chance.
He's not retiring. He's if you asked, I'm just living in the moment. I'm just soaking it all in. I'm just grateful for everything. You're trying to get into Aaron Rodgers' head. It's just another game for him. They just happen to lose.
Jared says he doesn't think it's a big deal at all. He's with you. He's with you on this one. Coltrane, the opposite, says it's Jordan Love season. A lot of people in the chat have been clamoring for Jordan Love all year, so I could see that being a consistent theme here. Yeah, I'm glad that you asked this question. So PFF, the official account, said, is Aaron Rodgers going to retire? Is this foreshadowing anything? We also have Mike who said, hey, is Renner interviewing for the Cardinals GM job? Is that why he's not here?
I might be after. I just sent my resume in.
Yeah,
it's been sent in.
Yeah,
just in case that's actually a true report.
What's the?
Did you tell people where Renner is, or is that a big secret?
No, every time Renner's not on the show, I let the chat speculate.
Oh yeah.
Like the first time he wasn't on the show, people were like, "Did he get fired?"
So
and I was like, "Oh."
There was a point when before he went to The Bachelor, we actually were all doing the podcast together, and we had to say he was like away on leave, and we couldn't say where he was. So the speculation was rampant for weeks before he was revealed as like the 14th best Bachelor that season. So we'll let that fester a little bit here.
He did make some highlights on the gridiron though for the football.
Oh, he did. It was unbelievable. He was the third best football player on the show, thanks to Clay Harbor. But yeah, he was made some highlights.
14th best. He's not even here to respond to it. I absolutely love it. All right, let's dig into some of these games. Let's get to the specifics. I usually do this with Mike, but I'm excited to do it with you here, Steve. The superlatives that we have for the games. The structure is the game that we want to talk about the most, the game that shaped the playoffs, the game that shaped the draft, and then the game that didn't make sense. So we're going to pick some different games here between us. Steve, as the Esteemed guest, I will give you the first shot at the game you want to talk about most from this past weekend.
So the Rams and the Seahawks game, just because poor Lions fans. Lions fans are watching this. I mean, congrats to Seahawks fans and everything, right? They win the game. But the Lions, what a season, right? They spend all year rooting against the Rams. Like, that's our draft pick. We need the Rams to lose. They're giving us a top 6 draft pick, but for 1 week, they go all in. They have to root for Baker Mayfield and the Rams, and they have to root against the refs, and the refs are kind of, not really doing them a solid with the running into the kicker and everything. Then it goes to overtime. The Seahawks are missing field goals. Then Baker lines up, and if you're watching the broadcast, it looks like a walk-off touchdown. Until Quandre Diggs comes out of nowhere, picks it off, taunts the sideline.
Taunts Bobby Wagner, by the way, in the Bobby Wagner Bowl. Just points straight at him.
Goes out of his way. Leaves 15 yards on the field to get the points in there.
Okay, thank you that somebody else brought that up. Because when he picked it off, he started celebrating before he even wanted to turn the corner.
Didn't even care.
You could have gotten like 10 more yards on that one. But look, it
looked great, though.
Ball or interception. Great. Yeah, he didn't want to sell it short on that.
So that game was intense.
Yes.
It was Lions fans needed the Rams to win, the Seahawks needed to win, and then they were going to in turn root for the Lions to beat the Packers. So there was just a lot of craziness happening in this game. You got Geno Smith now going to the playoffs for the first time. Didn't play his best game, but boy is he resilient. He's been every time he makes mistakes, he bounces back. I thought it was just a great back and forth game.
Broke Russell Wilson's single season passing record for the franchise.
Stop! I don't care.
Come on.
It took 17 games. Just stop with the 7. No more counting records.
Because he has the extra game.
Because everybody's breaking counting stat records right now because there's a 17th game. We always have to acknowledge, it took him an extra game.
You know what? That's a great point. I was just trying to be happy for the guy.
Oh, I am too.
But that is a great point.
Top 10 PFF quarterback this year. That's how
true.
I would parse it.
A lot of big time throws. I mean, the best part about it for Geno is, the extra game helped him. Obviously, that is how he got over that achievement. But Geno also has played his part to get the Seahawks to the postseason through his arm. It's not like he's just been this guy that they plopped in there and the rest of the team has carried him. He has been a big reason as a catalyst for why this team's really good.
Somebody get Sam out of the chat here. Sam's heckling me in the chat. What's happening
What is he saying? What's he saying?
He said, who's the big guy? Boo to this. Boo to this. He's just jealous he didn't get the call. He didn't get the call up here. Sam.
Jealousy said bad luck on you.
Go
Sam.
write your awards, man.
Okay, so my game that I want to talk about the most is Bengals-Ravens. And I'll start this one off with the Ravens side of things. I'm kind of shocked. The Ravens basically punted this game as much as they did. With the guys that they had inactives, and I understand maybe not forcing Lamar out there because you want to save him for the playoffs, but Mark Andrews, J.K. Dobbins, there were just guys throughout the roster that they did not play in this game because they were clearly just trying to, I don't want to say punt, but not play as well as they could to make sure guys were rested and they were ready for next week's wildcard round. That makes sense, but you're in a situation where if you would have won this game, all of a sudden, all you needed was the Chargers to then beat the Broncos, all right? You didn't know the Chargers were going to lose to the Broncos. We didn't know what the Chargers were going to do. But the Chargers only, what they did, and we'll get to this with playing their players too long and whatever, they were only able to do that because the game didn't matter because the Ravens lost. If the Ravens would have won, it would have forced them into a situation where, okay, well, they're basically saying if the Chargers win, then we play either a lesser opponent in the Jacksonville Jaguars, all due respect to the Jags in the first round of the playoffs,
right,
or you set yourself up to have a coin flip to potentially host the game against the Bengals. I'm very shocked that the Ravens did not try in this game more than I thought they were going to.
Yeah, I mean, the coin flip thing I could understand. If that was the only thing on the table, trying to beat the Bengals versus resting your players, trying to beat Cincinnati just to have a 50-50 shot at a home game, I can understand resting. But that 5 seed is coveted, right? So the 5 seed is the team that you play the Jags. Mm-hmm. And again, no offense to the Jags, but they're not one of the 3 powerhouses. They're not the Chiefs, Bills, or Bengals. So the 5 seed, you should be playing for that. But look, a lot of teams around the NFL are doing things differently. Some teams are saying health is the most important thing, right? We need to stay healthy. As long as we're in the tournament, let's just stay healthy, give them our best game. There's also this element of they were most likely to play the Bengals, And how much do you want to really, play them hard 2 weeks in a row, save your best game plan? I mean, there's elements to that as well, because their most likely outcome was still the Chargers would beat the Broncos if they were playing, even though they didn't. The most likely outcome was going to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I guess. I think the argument that I find against it the most is probably the one that you just made, where do you want to show the Bengals really anything?
Yeah.
Do you want to show them anything at all, knowing that you're probably going to play them next week? Maybe you don't, but still, man, I just feel like the chance of you getting to play that game in Baltimore is huge, especially because of how good Cincinnati has been at home going back to last season. If you take out that Steelers loss that they had at the beginning of the year in overtime, Bengals ran the table at home this year. Sure, they didn't play the Bills. Obviously, that game didn't get finished. But they ran the table at home. And going back to last year, the run that they had down the stretch, even into the playoffs, playing
Different
at home.
team, yeah.
This team's incredible at home. And that's my other takeaway from this game is that don't sleep on the Bengals. I genuinely believe the Bengals have as good of a shot to make it to the Super Bowl as any team in the AFC. They're the 3 seed. I get it. But people I wouldn't pick against the Chiefs. I wouldn't pick against the Bills. They're all in the same tier. They're all genuinely in the same tier for me with the Bengals, the Bills, and the Chiefs.
Yeah, the divisional and AFC championship are going to be incredible. Assuming 2 out of the top 3 teams get there, assuming the Bengals and Bills take care of business in the first round, see what happens with Lamar. Yeah, if he comes back next week. But, I mean, if it's not Lamar Jackson and it might be Skylar Thompson in Miami, it might be a cakewalk to that Bills-Bengals game that we never got in round 2 here.
Right. Why Big Jordan said, Trevor, where's all the NFL news? Fire somebody. Hold on, let me call somebody real quick and let me get some firings on you.
Don't be rooting for people to lose their job.
All right, Steve, what is the game that shaped the playoffs for you? What do we got?
I think it's got to be Jags-Titans, right? It was the only pure play-in game, right? The winner to the AFC South. It kept the Titans out of the playoffs. No offense to the Titans, but they had a 6-game losing streak coming into the game. What a story, right? The 7-3 Titans, the 3-7 Jags. The script completely flipped, and you get to see Trevor Lawrence in the playoffs. He didn't have his best game the other night. The Jags set wasn't a record, but they made a fourth quarter comeback without even picking up a first down in the fourth quarter. Hadn't been happened since 2000 when the Panthers did it. There you go. And whatever. The Jaguars defense played great, and we get to see Trevor Lawrence in the playoffs. And it's Doug Peterson, the turnaround with Urban Meyer. What an incredible game, and it was winning in. It was exciting, and like I said, the Jacksonville was electric Saturday night. You don't get that often.
That's an incredible stat. I didn't know that stat until just this moment. Obviously, it took a defensive touchdown. I think that something that matters a ton about this is no, it was not Trevor Lawrence's best game, but we now get playoff experience for Trevor Lawrence, which I think is what's really important. Him getting to get to the postseason and understanding what that is like. Obviously, it was a lot of fun to watch on Saturday, and I'm excited to see the crowd in Jacksonville and how the Jags end up playing in that first playoff game. The game that shaped the playoffs for me, Bills-Patriots. This was a situation where certainly if the Patriots would have won, they would have been in. They do not win, but this shaped the playoffs for me specifically because of how well the Bills played, right? Obviously, what happened with Damar Hamlin last Monday was unbelievably emotional. And emotion has an ability to play a role in how focused teams are, how well they play. Do they slink? Do they play for their brother? All that kinds of stuff. And I felt like we truly saw that from the Buffalo Bills. This is something where obviously the positive news of what has happened with Damar Hamlin, which has been wonderful, goes into the fact that they have heard good things about him and that he was able to FaceTime him. And they said afterwards that he broke it down in the locker room on FaceTime with him. And Amazing. That is just so unbelievable. That's an incredible moment. That's something that's so powerful. And not only is this team unbelievably talented, not only are they good on their own, they took this moment and it feels like it's just taking them to another level as well. And that is something that's unquantifiable, I think, for me, that this is going to shape the playoffs because in a moment where everything was shaken of what could this Bills team be, what could this season end up being, it feels like this is almost just a slingshot of momentum for these guys to play for Damar and just play their absolute best. And I think we're going to get the best version of the Buffalo Bills throughout this playoffs, however long it lasts, whether it's divisional round, championship round, Super Bowl, whatever. This shaped the playoffs for me because I got to see how the Bills were able to come out for the first time after what happened last Monday, and it tells me that I think the best version of the Bills are what we're going to see over the next month or so.
Unreal moment with the kickoff return for a touchdown to start. And the place was going nuts, and rightfully so. And I don't think people realize it wasn't like they played Monday night and then you have 6 days off, go play Sunday. I mean, football is a routine game, right? You have to practice, right? You have to practice on Wednesday for Sunday. The fact that the Bills were able to prepare during this week because they still didn't have all the good news by Wednesday and Thursday, those days that you're preparing. So to be able to come back out and play that game and play off that emotion and everything is really incredible by the Bills.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. All right, what game shaped the draft?
Oh, Texans-Colts maybe? The Texans sitting there.
We have the same one. We have to have the same one.
Of course, it's the biggest. I mean, it's both ways, too. I think we've mostly looked at this through the Texans lens here of they screwed it up. They lose the number 1 overall pick. But the Colts now have the 4 pick.
Yeah,
and
huge.
I think Jim Irsay, he's had a rough season. He goes and gets Jeff Saturday. I think there was a great article in The Athletic this week saying that he thought it was going to work. So I don't think Jim Irsay was tanking. But as you got closer, the Colts could have had the 6th pick. At the end of the day,
work. It just depends on what your version of work is.
Depends on what your goal was.
I think the Colts were picking around the middle of the first round when all this was starting to go down, when Jim Irsay won that first game of him as head coach, and now they're picking 4. So I'd tell you it worked.
So here's what's changed, right? The Texans go from picking their quarterback at 1 to now they're at 2 and the Colts are at 4. The Bears hold all the cards at 1.
Right.
And Jim Irsay is desperate. He is desperate. He wants a drafted quarterback. He does not want to go get Derek Carr. He doesn't want the next veteran. He's done that before. He wants his quarterback. He's going to hand over every pick that he has to go get Bryce Young, whoever they want. Will Levis. Is it C.J. Stroud? Stroud might be moving up just after the playoff game against Georgia.
Totally.
Whichever quarterback they love. I think the Colts are now in play to go get 1.
Yep.
Even though the Texans are ahead of them. So this game absolutely shaped the future of both franchises.
No, you're totally right. I think a lot of people are going to talk about the narratives around the Houston Texans and how they blew it for the number 1 overall pick. I get it. The winning is the ultimate goal, and that's what these teams go for. But they blew it to have the number 1 overall pick, and it changes everything. On last week's show, on Friday, Seth Galina and I were talking about like things that we would like to see in the NFL draft, whether it was a certain player go to a certain team or a certain trade or something like that. And I said, I want to see Chicago get the number 1 overall pick. Why? Because it's going to make our jobs a hell of a lot more fun over the next couple of months as we talk about this pick being for sale and what does it go for and who moves up. The possibilities are endless. You talk about, I'm glad that you talked about Indianapolis there at 4 because I think they're in the driver's seat, but Las Vegas at 7, Atlanta at 8, Carolina at 9, right? These are all teams that need a quarterback. Well, you can make the case with the Falcons, but certainly think that Indianapolis, Las Vegas, and Carolina, all 3 teams that are picking in the top 10, you can realistically call up the Chicago Bears and say, hey, would you entertain moving back? And because they get to stick in the top 10, the answer is yes to all of them. So now you're in a massive bidding war with at least 3 different franchises.
And they're all in play, right? We've seen teams move up from 12 or 13 all the way to 1.
Yeah.
Like anybody can move to 1 if they're willing to give up enough, right? So the Bears absolutely hold all the cards. And then the Bears have to make that decision, right? I'm not saying nothing against Justin Fields, but the Bears are going to evaluate these quarterbacks too. They have to. What if Bryce Young is the best quarterback they've ever seen when they go and evaluate him?
Sure.
They have decisions to make as well. I know Bears fans don't want to hear that at all. We got Justin Fields. He's the next superstar. Looks like the next Lamar Jackson as a runner right now. Unbelievable. But the Bears have decisions to make with what to do at 1. Do I pick a quarterback, get the extra couple rookie seasons? Do we trade down? Do we stick with Fields and trade down, get this haul? Do we even pick a Will Anderson? Like, all that stuff's on the table for the Bears now in the next couple months.
Yeah. Why Big Jordan saying Anthony Richardson to Carolina? Write it down. Could.
We don't even know who's coaching in Carolina yet, so we'll see. We'll see.
Could. Walt says, disagree with Steve. Colts won't trade high picks to move up from 4 to 1. I don't know, Walt. I think I do agree with Steve on this one. I think Irsay's desperate.
Go read the article in The Athletic. Irsay was he's still hurting that he lost Andrew Luck.
Yeah. Right?
And he doesn't want to play. He just went Phillip Rivers to Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan. He doesn't want to play that game.
No.
I'm not saying he has to move up. He might still he'll get a quarterback at 4. But if there's a guy that they like better than everyone else, I think he's willing to go make the move. And he will force Chris Ballard's hand.
I agree with you. And it puts the Texans in an interesting spot, too, because, I think a lot of Houston Texans fans, I saw on Twitter, and I was just doing some reading, so I saw some comments as well. They're like, this doesn't really change anything for us. Chicago's not going to pick a quarterback at 1. It's like, yeah, but Chicago could very well, and we talked about this a little bit in the pre-show, probably should trade down.
They should.
If that's the case, somebody's moving up to go get your quarterback. Houston now has to sit in a situation where they go, Okay, now we have to be in this conversation because even though it's going to take less for us to move up one spot from 2 to 1, we probably still have to do that. Because before this week, let's just say they wanted Bryce Young. All it would have cost for them to have Bryce Young was one selection, one draft pick. That's it. Now it's going to take you multiple. Now it's going to take you one. It's probably going to take you a day 2 pick, probably 2 day 2 picks, maybe one this year, maybe one next year. I don't know what the value is going to be from 2 to 1. People might say, oh, that's way too much money to drop down one spot. The problem is there's the other teams behind him that are just going to be bidding him up the whole time. And I think this is going to be a process that we're going to talk about throughout the offseason, which is going to make this obviously a lot of fun. What about the game that didn't make sense? I'm excited for you to talk about this one. What do you got?
Cowboys Commanders, man. 24-6.
Not
Dak,
great.
there was a point. Dak finishes 14 of 37. And we're over here using PFF numbers to defend Dak over the last couple weeks. He's tied for the league lead in interceptions going into the week. We're like, no. He's only got 17 turnover-worthy plays. It's not great, but he's had some bad interception luck. Don't look at Dak's interception numbers. And then he goes and makes us look bad. He keeps throwing the ball to the defense. Back-to-back plays, in particular, throws it to the defense, one of which is a pick 6. What happened to the Cowboys? Commanders played hard, but what happened to the Cowboys? They couldn't complete a pass. Dak played horribly. And what does that mean going into the playoffs now as they play the Bucs next week?
I still think that Dak is a really good quarterback. Right?
I agree.
Dak is a really great quarterback. This does not change the ceiling of what I think the Cowboys can be with Dak at quarterback. The problem is that having a game like this, and certainly looking back at what the Cowboys season has been, despite them winning 12 games, the difference between the peak and the valley of what the Cowboys can be every week is a lot more vast than we thought that it was going to be. I think the problem is you look at quarterback play and you look at a guy like Dak and you look at just some of the things that he can do and how great he plays the position. You say to yourself, the reason why he's great is because of this overall consistency. Sure, it might not be the best it is every week, but it's not going to be the pit. Dak is showing with these turnovers that it's lower than we thought that it was going to be with him. Even though I still believe in the ceiling, there is a realistic chance that the Bucs somehow beat the Cowboys. And that's wild for me to say after watching Bucs football for the last 4 months, but that's what the Cowboys have kind of put out there, especially yesterday.
Cowboys defense hasn't been nearly as good in recent weeks. The pass rush isn't necessarily there. Cornerback 2 opposite Trayvon Diggs is a question mark. Dallas has brought more question marks to the playoffs. Now, last year they were feeling good going to the playoffs, but Dak still had some of those turnover-worthy play issues going into the playoffs, and that showed up in their game against the 49ers, in which they lost. So, yeah, tough. This was confusing because technically Commanders weren't playing for anything. Cowboys still had the division on the table in case the Eagles lost, and they laid an egg.
Nice dude says Dak equals Kirk Cousins.
See, that might be a compliment. 13-4 Kirk Cousins with 8 fourth-quarter comebacks this year.
I don't know what the Kirk Cousins, because Coltrane said the same thing. Dak is what people think Cousins is.
Interesting.
That's a little bit interesting.
Dak's had more fourth-quarter magic until this season when Cousins stole all of it. Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe they high-fived in the offseason. I don't know.
What do you have?
The game that didn't make sense to me. It has to be Panthers-Saints.
I didn't even know that game was played.
I don't even know if it was either. Panthers won this football game, okay? They won this game 10-7. Their starting quarterback and only quarterback, Sam Darnold's stat line, was 5 for 15, 43 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 2.8.
Quality.
On the other side of things, New Orleans had a 100-yard rusher in Alvin Kamara, almost averaged 5 yards a carry, 23 carries, 107 rushing yards. Andy Dalton went 15 for 25, 171 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks, didn't throw a pick. Chris Olave had 60 yards and a touchdown in this one. On the defensive side of the football, Tyrann Mathieu had an interception. Daniel Sorensen had an interception. Tyrann Mathieu had a forced fumble. Andrew Dow had a forced fumble. How did Carolina win this game?
And Carolina's only touchdown was Sam Darnold fumbling at the goal line that they recovered in the end zone.
It's just hilarious.
Sam Darnold also managed to throw an interception with under 2 minutes left in a tie game and then still had a fourth-quarter comeback on top of that.
And still win. It's improbable. Truly, we have had this segment for a long time. This is probably the most game that didn't make sense to me of all of the games that didn't make sense that I've highlighted this year.
It's one of the lowest passer ratings to ever win in a game.
Has
Rex
to be.
Grossman had the 0 with the famous "They are who we thought they were" game back in 2006.
He had a 0 for
He had
that
a
game?
0 passer rating in that game against the Cardinals. And Darnold was like third worst of all time. I forget who was second, but 2.8 is pretty impressive for Sam Darnold.
Rex Grossman, Gator great.
Yes, he was.
People do forget.
Not a Bear great.
Not a Bear great. In many instances, not a Bear great. All right, let's do a best of the rest. We like to do this to highlight some games that maybe we want to say some words on that we didn't get a chance to, that maybe didn't fit in that superlative category. You can see on the screen there all of the results, so you guys tell us what you think really stood out from yesterday and Saturday's performances as well. But Steve, what stands out to you for best of the rest?
So I cheated a little bit. I talked about some of the same games, but I wanted to highlight players.
That's fine. Yeah,
both named
we can do
Josh Allen. It was a great week for Josh Allen's. So Buffalo Bills Josh Allen with 2 incredible throws, right? This whole Patriots-Bills thing. The Patriots used to be the stars, the big boys on the block, but no longer. Josh Allen, big-time throw to John Brown, and then as big of a big-time throw as you get down the sideline to Stephon Diggs. Every time the Patriots tried to come back, Josh Allen made big-time throws, and then Josh Allen, the Jaguar, 89.6 grades, 7 pressures, fumble recovery, 4 touchdown to get the Jags into the playoffs. So great week for both Josh Allens.
When I saw this on the rundown, the only thing that I could think of was how much our former colleague, now at the Ringer, Austin Gale, truly hated the Josh Allen sacks Josh Allen tweets. You remember when that happened? When the Jags played the Bills? And like literally everyone on the planet had the same exact tweet.
Austin,
and I was in the same room with Austin, and he's just seething watching everybody flood the timeline with those tweets.
Austin hates lazy tweeting. And
He does?
I've been criticized by Austin
so
for
have I.
lazy tweeting
So have I.
before.
Yeah.
And I've leaned into it. I've leaned into the full Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
Like the playoff picture is set. Here are the games. You know, like just like the obvious, state the obvious. And
Yeah.
you got to lean into it sometimes just to needle Austin a little bit.
Back on the Tailgate podcast with him and Renner, they would have the Save Your Life segment, which would be him highlighting tweets.
Mostly mine. Mostly my tweets.
I feel like I was on there a ton as well. And you know what? I'm not giving the engagement back,
Yeah,
Austin.
you're gone, Austin. See ya. We'll tweet any way we want, Austin Gale.
Not dead, to be fair, or to be.
I always say rest in peace, but I say, he's not dead. He's just he's moved on.
Yeah,
of course.
we just hope that he's at peace.
Yeah.
And well rested.
And rested.
You know what I'm saying? What I want to touch on from these games, I touched on it a little bit before when I talked about the Ravens. Staley playing his starters. Brandon Staley.
Yeah.
In a game that did not matter for them at all whatsoever. Now, I kind of get the whole, hey, we want to make sure the offense is tip-top shape, going into Jacksonville, playing them in the playoffs. We want to make sure that we get that victory there. If they win that game, most likely outcome is they're probably playing the Chiefs in Arrowhead the following week. They want to make sure that their offense is ready to go for both of those contests. But you couldn't move in seeding whether you won or you lost this game. And we're getting deep into this game, and Mike Williams is getting banged up. Joey Bosa is getting banged up. They're playing Austin Eckler still, like, deep into the game. Like, what are we? Why?
If Brandon Staley had come to the press conference and said, "Hey, look, I wanted to keep my guys sharp," if he came with a reason, I want to keep them sharp. Instead, he came with, "We're limited by the roster," right?
No.
As Sam reminded me this morning, go look at who the Giants played in this game. Right? Now, the Chargers had a little disadvantage, right? They have to set their inactives an hour and a half before the game, and the game that they were dependent on, the Ravens, was unknown at the time. So they had to keep Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. But you could easily just, run a bad offense. Who cares? Keep everybody healthy. And the Chargers and everybody, the Rams, and then Staley coming from the Rams, all they do in the preseason is save reps, right? Save rep it at practice. Don't put guys out there in the game. Rest guys. Health is the most important thing. And he kind of went the opposite here. And I don't think his explanation was that good.
No.
So that was questionable.
Yeah, don't really know what he was doing there, but wanted to make sure that I threw that out there too. Well, instead of just reviewing the games as we saw them this weekend, I want to do a little bit of a year in review for certain categories here with you since we've got you on the desk with us. We got 3 different categories. Overwhelmed, underwhelmed, and then a player who exceeded expectations. We're each going to go kind of back and forth here. So first, I want to hear overwhelmed. What team this year overwhelmed or overachieved from what we thought they were going to be in the preseason?
Oh, it has to be the Giants. I mean, the Giants finished 9-7-1. They started out even better than that. And nothing about their season makes sense, right? I mean, if I went and said the Giants 2 years ago invested a ton of money in Kenny Golladay, a first-round pick in Kadarius Toney, and Golladay didn't find the end zone until week 18 in garbage time.
No.
And Toney is making plays for the Chiefs.
For the Chiefs.
And then I said the Giants are going to go 9-7-1 with Darius Slayton, Richie James Jr., and Isaiah Hodgins as their top receivers. That makes no sense. The Giants make no sense whatsoever. And I think Brian Daboll needs a ton of credit for putting this thing together. They had this high volatile, high variance defense, blitzing like crazy with Wink Martindale. Daniel Jones, they got a good solid season out of him, tapped into him as a runner, and they just found a way to win games. And nothing about their stats or their performance really makes sense and matches up to 9-7-1.
I mean, I certainly cannot disagree with you. I picked a different team just because I wanted to pick a different team, but they are one of a handful where you just go, what a job that they have done this season. Brian Daboll absolutely having his name in the category for Coach of the Year. I don't think he's going to win it because it often goes to the coaches that it seems like an oxymoron, but like has more wins, right? But sometimes it's doing more with less that seems so impressive, and I feel like Brian Daboll absolutely just deserves a nod for what he has done with that team this year. The team that's overachieved or overwhelmed for me is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Getting back to the playoffs, man. You look at how this team looked like they were down and out, even midway through the season, right?
3-7.
Not too long ago. They looked like they were destined for another top 10 pick, and you were trying to convince yourself, you're like, all right, well, another waste of a year, but it's Doug Peterson's first year, and it's technically Trevor Lawrence's first year with a real head coach, but now kind of creeping into his rookie contract. It's almost halfway over. You wonder what's going to happen with his team, and now all of a sudden the future looks very bright at Jacksonville. What Doug Peterson has done with that team to go from picking number 1 overall last year, and I want to make this clear too, the circus that was Urban Meyer in charge in Jacksonville, for Doug Peterson to be able to come in with so much confidence, so much experience and say, nope, cleaning house in all of these different categories. We are leaving no stone unturned. Nothing about the previous regime is going to still exist in this building. And they were able to do that, and they're in the playoffs because of it. Sure, yes, I'm fully aware and admit the division's not that great. If they were playing in a different division, they probably don't make the playoffs. But they did. And most importantly, it's about how they climbed back and where they are now as a team moving forward, because the arrow is pointing up for Jacksonville. And it's been a long time since we've really been able to say that. And for them to have the turnaround they did compared to a year ago, incredible job by that franchise.
Coming off maybe the worst coaching job in NFL history.
Yes.
So on one hand, it's like Doug Peterson, the bar's low. Don't kick your kickers.
Sure.
Don't,
yes.
Don't stay in Cincinnati with some random girl. The bar's low. To just be better. But to get them to 9-8, that takes a culture shift, right? I mean, I've talked to people who were in Jacksonville last year, and they're basically like, we talk to each other. We have to decompress. We have to, sulk together and try to get over it because it was so bad last year. So incredible job by Doug Peterson and the Jags to get them back on track.
Well, what about a team that underperformed this year?
Oh, the Broncos. I mean, the entire AFC West minus the Chiefs, right? The whole offseason narrative was, well, the Broncos have Russell Wilson and the Raiders and the Chargers, and we're going to start challenging the Chiefs. But the Broncos in particular, going all in for Russell Wilson. And it was a clean narrative coming into the season in Denver. They had a really good roster, a good defense last year. Everything has been solid in Denver the last couple of years except quarterback play. And whether you thought Russell Wilson was on the decline or not, he had showed signs of it. But it was still the right move, right? It was still the right move on paper. Maybe not re-upping him and redoing his contract until he's 40 and all that stuff. But bringing Russell Wilson into the building to that roster was the right move until it wasn't, right? I mean, it looked good on paper.
Yeah.
They should have been competitive.
Yeah.
They finally showed signs of life yesterday, but boy, was it bad.
Yeah. No,
5-12.
Yeah, it's tough to argue that any team has been as disappointing as the Broncos have been this year. I mean, they've already got a one-year wonder head coach firing. Nathaniel Hackett's already out the door. You don't know what's going to happen. They are clearly the most active team right now when it comes to head coaching vacancies and attacking that, as we've seen in the news. They requested to interview Sean Payton, and they're going to be able to interview Sean Payton as well. I also saw that Dan Quinn is on their list of guys to be interviewed, which second year in a row that Dan Quinn's going to interview for that head coaching gig. I thought he should have got it last year.
I'm curious to see if they think they need somebody who knows Russell Wilson. Because that fit with Nathaniel Hackett obviously didn't work. New offense. The people in Seattle know Russ better than anybody. They traded him So how much do you go back to the well to somebody that knows Russell Wilson? Because he's the most important part of that entire team in the rebuild there.
Yes, they have too much money, even beyond the draft picks. They have too much money invested in him with that new contract and not make
They're
him
stuck with him for a few years.
Centerpiece
So
of the coach.
have to make him work.
Coach. Tampa Bay Buccaneers underwhelmed for me. I had to say it. Look, they're division champs, and I think that was predicted of them going into the season. But how it has looked getting to that point has been a massive disappointment. The over/under win total for the Buccaneers was 11.5 going into the year. Went 8-9, so they were well short of that. Offensive grade this year in the 20s is 20th. Defensive grade took a big step back, 23rd. The team has not been good, and it just feels like there's been dysfunction and a disconnect between the coaches and the players and how they're performing. And yes, they've had some injuries that you can certainly point to and say those are reasons why they've struggled. Every team goes through injuries, though. It felt like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were dealing with those injuries a lot worse than other teams around the NFL were. And it just, when Tom Brady's your quarterback, when he comes back, it's got to be better than it had looked. And it's funny that we're sitting here thinking that they can and maybe will be the Dallas Cowboys, and who knows what they're going to do in the postseason, but they have underperformed. No doubt about it.
And that's why, though, because just 2 weeks ago, Brady and Evans decided to turn back the clock and just dominate. And Brady has one of the best games of his career out of nowhere. And it's like, okay, we weren't expecting that every week all season, but we also weren't expecting them to struggle to score 13 points and struggle to score 16 and have to make a bunch of 10-point fourth-quarter comebacks against mediocre teams. A lot of the Bucs don't make sense because, there were some injuries, but there's still Mike Evans. There's still Chris Godwin. There's whatever's left of Julio Jones. There's all these big names out there. And Tom Brady, whether he's 45 or not, they still should have been much better this year.
Blink said, of course, Trevor LMAO. Yeah, I said it. You knew I was going there, and I did.
You're disappointed.
Hurt.
Because they underwhelmed you.
And they're going to beat the Cowboys this week. What's the player who, let's give some praise. We'll end this segment with some praise. Player who exceeded expectations for you. Who you got?
Going back to Geno Smith here, right? Because some people in the chat suggested the Seahawks overwhelmed. Well, Geno Smith and the entire Seahawks team did. Before the season, it looked like the Seahawks had one of the worst rosters outside of receiver. Defense was a question. They overhauled the offensive line with all the rookies. But I don't think Geno Smith was in a battle with Drew Lock for the starting job. And Geno Smith goes out there and looks nothing like he looked as a starter way back in 2014. Even looked nothing like he looked in the preseason the last few years. He's making these off-schedule plays. He's pinpoint down the field. He had a tough game yesterday, but that touchdown pass that he had to Lock, it was pinpoint, 36 yards right on his hands. We hadn't seen that from Geno Smith. So it wasn't all perfect. He's regressed a little bit down the stretch here, but what an incredible story. And it all if he doesn't play at this level, the Seahawks aren't in the playoffs. 80.1 overall PFF grade, a top 10 quarterback by our grading this year. Top 10 in a lot of other metrics. Geno Smith has been fantastic.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Nice Dude said Geno as well. Nick said Geno for sure. Daniel Sauter said Josh Jacobs, another player who overachieved. Josh Jacobs went from playing in the Hall of Fame game in the preseason to leading the NFL in rushing, which is, that's pretty
Just incredible. To rewind, that was hilarious, right? I mean, we're all like yearning for football news the whole offseason. The first game you get to watch is the Hall of Fame game. Let's look into every single move, and Josh Jacobs is out there for the first drive. And it's like, well, there's a new regime. He's not going to be around here. And then he's the most valuable running back by PFF WAR in the NFL, and Jacobs was outstanding, the rushing leader, right? Whatever that's worth. I don't keep track of that stuff anymore. But, yeah, Josh Jacobs, great year for him.
Sweep says Justin Fields. Matt Weber says Garrett Wilson. Jeff Sperano says Tariq Woolen. Certainly Tariq Woolen as well. Nico said Tyler Algier. Good shout out there. Tyler Algier with one of the quietest 1,000 yards rushing.
I love Algier. I knew.
Dude, I knew. He was awesome.
Brock Purdy was in the chat here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Brock Purdy has to be an answer. James Houston. Uncle Dusty, shout out James Houston. The one that I'm going to point to, I actually haven't seen anybody say this, and I'm surprised. To me, it's Jalen Hurts. And, I thought Jalen Hurts was a fine quarterback. He took this team to incredible heights. MVP level play this year before he got hurt. I mean, he has been unbelievable. What he has been as a weapon for this team with his arm, with his legs, how he brings that dual threat ability every single snap. You see the PFF grades right there, man. His performance all season long. And I was somebody who, when he was coming through his draft class, said, yeah, I'd take a shot at the back end of the first round on Jalen Hurts. And now a lot of people really shared that sentiment. They were like, no, you can't draft this guy in the first round. He's very limited in what he can do. And even I would look at what happened this past season, certainly, and say, what an incredible job. This is overachieving the expectations that we had for you. He fills in this role so beautifully with this Philadelphia offense. Him and Nick Sirianni, so in sync. And it's just, yeah, there are a lot of other great pieces in Philadelphia. This is a great football team. But don't take that away from Jalen Hurts being a major contributor of that. He has also turned himself into a great player, and I got to respect the big year.
Yeah, so he was fantastic, and I want to give the Eagles proper credit because I think their entire process was right. You had a late first on Jalen Hurts?
Yeah.
I don't know if they drafted him in the second round because they thought he was a first-round player that dropped, but I just thought they had Carson Wentz already, and they drafted Jalen Hurts. And a lot of Eagles fans at the time didn't like the pick. Eagles fans were also right about being mad about Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, but the Eagles had a good process pick here. Mm-hmm. Draft him. At worst, he becomes a good backup. At best, he becomes what he is right now, and you move on from Carson Wentz. And you have to credit the Eagles for tapping into Jalen Hurts' rushing ability. I didn't think he was this special as a runner, but what they've done with him in short yardage, what they've done with him in the design running game, what he's done as a scrambler, and then him, having A.J. Brown helps everybody, but I love what the Eagles have done overall, and I love the way Jalen Hurts has developed. So I think it's a symbiotic relationship there. They have done what's necessary to develop Jalen Hurts as a quarterback, and you're seeing it on the field this year.
Yeah, I think when we talk about rushing quarterbacks, we think of Justin Fields, right? We just go like, oh, who are the guys who athletically can break off these like crazy runs? And in reality, yeah, Jalen Hurts has that ability, and I think that he does have that speed, but it's the I'll say 4 to 8 yard first downs that he just picks up with his legs, or those short yardage situations, the 3rd and 1 conversions, the 4th and 1 conversions. He had 13 rushing touchdowns this year. Like when you get into the red zone, when you get in the goal line, becoming that extra weapon, that is also, and I would say probably more common, the way that you can attach mobility to a quarterback and how that can be an asset to your team. And I just think that Jalen Hurts checks all those boxes.
I always say it raises the floor of the offense. It's harder to have bad games when you can steal first downs, all the things you described. You could steal first downs and steal short yardage touchdowns the way Jalen Hurts has done.
All right, before we get out of here, let's give people an early playoff bet that we like. So you see that. So you see
define like.
That you wouldn't hate if you just threw a couple bucks on because you think that it might have a good shot of cashing out big for you. What do you got?
Your underwhelming team.
Yes.
The Bucks.
Yes.
Plus 2,500 to win it all. Now.
To win it all.
To win it all. Yeah. A couple bucks. I mean, I'm not putting a lot on this, but to win it all, plus 2,500.
2,500 is a good odds.
So we talk about the Cowboys as a winnable game, right? The Bucks have beaten the Cowboys each of the last 2 years, including this season, back in Week 1. I know that was ages ago, but they beat them this season. It's playoff Tom Brady. You still have Mike Evans. You still have Chris Godwin. You have the pieces here. The defense is good enough. It's a comparable defense to what it was in 20 and 21. It is. The offense is terrible this season. But would it surprise you if they went on a run? Like 2 weeks ago against the Panthers. Would it surprise you if Brady and Evans found it again? And then think about some of the other matchups, right? As much as we're complimenting Jalen Hurts, can he keep it up? He just looked a little rusty yesterday. Can he keep it up? I think the Eagles are the best team in the NFC with the Niners. If they run into the Vikings, are you really afraid of the Vikings? I think the Bucks might be able to sneak through. Okay. Or they're going to lose next Monday night.
Okay.
But plus 2,500.
Yeah, why not? Throw a couple bucks on it.
Couple bucks.
Maybe cash out. I'd certainly love to see it. The long shot playoff bet that I like, it feels like the two teams that I fear the most that are on such a run right now are the 49ers in the NFC and the Cincinnati Bengals on the AFC side. If you were to bet those two teams to just meet in the Super Bowl, it's plus 1,600.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I like this bet.
Yeah.
Bengals, Niners, Super Bowl matchup. I think there are very realistic paths for both of these teams to make it. I think it's obviously more difficult for the Bengals to make it, but certainly I think that this is possible. This is the one where I looked at it and I was like, what teams do I fear or trust the most in the playoffs that could make it, that could match up against each other? This was one that I really liked that had odds that were a lot lower than I thought they were going to be. So plus 1,600 about that one.
Shades of 1982, 1988.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah, Bengals
also,
are going to get this one.
I got to interrupt you guys. Cliff's gone. They just fired Cliff Kingsbury.
Cliff Kingsbury is out.
It makes sense, again, going back to what we talked about. If Cliff was going to be on the hot seat going into this season, which we figured he was going to be, why would you let him go into a hot seat season with Kyler missing half the year? Silly.
Yeah.
Pair the GM
Complete
with the
overhaul.
head coach overhaul, make it a multi-year plan. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's a complete overhaul, makes sense there. And Kyler Murray got hurt, but before that, it was bad. I mean, it was just bad. They had been getting better every year, but they collapsed at the end of last season. So the last year and a half has been really rough in Arizona. There's now 5 head coaching openings: Broncos, Cardinals, Colts, Panthers, and Texans.
This is the right decision. This was the right decision here for the Arizona Cardinals. I think that they are doing the right thing. All right, question of the day. Answering question of the day before we get out of here. What was it? Jamar Chase, one of 4 wide receivers to start their careers back-to-back with at least 80 receptions and 1,000 receiving yards. Name the other 3 players. We like Justin Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson, definitely. Give me Torrey Holt.
Do you guys want a hint?
So you like Torrey Holt. I like OBJ as well.
OBJ is a good shot.
I like those 3, but can we get a hint? What do we got as a hint?
All active.
All active?
Sort of active.
Okay, so Odell's
OBJ is sort of active.
Odell is one of them
Justin Jefferson.
because he said he's sort of active and he can't.
Good job, Tyler.
Yeah, so he can't.
I'm just laughing at Tyler, laughing at us.
All right, so
All right, Mike.
It's OBJ, it's Justin Jefferson, it's Jamar Chase, and it's one other player.
I'm looking up names. I'm trying to think.
I don't think it's Evans.
Just guess Evans.
I guess I could. I mean, if we don't have a better one, we can guess Evans. Do we like Evans or Julio better? Because a lot of people were saying Julio.
Not Julio.
Not Julio?
He had one of those like 60 catch seasons for over 1,000, that type of thing.
Oh, what about Michael Thomas?
Oh yeah, Michael Thomas. That was already mentioned in the
Yeah.
chat. Yeah, Michael Thomas, Justin Jefferson, not Torrey Holt, and OBJ.
Yeah. All right, that's our 4. That's
Nailed
our 4.
it. I feel like that hint helped because OBJ and Michael Thomas both sort of active.
Because I was talking myself into
Kind of
Torrey
active.
Holt there for sure.
To be fair, we did have both of those guys on the board before your hint.
Michael Thomas came from the chat earlier, so good.
Yeah, that was a good pull from the
Good
chat.
shout by them.
Great pull from the chat. Do you have a chat champ, Eli, for today?
Yes, we do. Zachary Dumeyer. Just looks like a new name in chat, super active. Also give a shout out to Andy Dalton as a player who exceeded his expectations this year.
Wow.
Red Rifle. He
I
did
concur.
Got to give the love.
Yeah, or as I called him earlier in the season, Red Rocket. Didn't do that on purpose, but now I'm just going to think about that every time I think about Andy Dalton. So
Maybe stick with Rifle.
he should stick with Rifle. I think that's more appropriate nickname. Steve, thank you so much for joining us, man. This was a ton of fun.
It's good to be here. Appreciate it, man.
I know some people in the chat were saying that we need Steve for trivia on Thursdays.
Oh, boy.
I don't know if it's going to happen this Thursday, but that would be fun maybe for whatever the last trivia would be of the season.
Yeah,
if,
we can do
if
that.
we can get in.
It's 90s trivia.
You got a lot of PFF data.
Yeah, Steve, you would dominate the ancient history.
The ancient history.
We do. we have an ancient
You and
history
Eric Eager
category.
own the 90s NFL.
Yeah, Eric's
trivia
got quite the mind for it.
stats.
Rest in peace to him as well.
Again, not dead. We just hope, well rested.
Alive and kicking
And at
somewhere.
peace. Appreciate everybody watching the show. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That's Steve Palazzolo. For everybody in the I almost said transfer portal, the production portal.
That's what it should be.
Thank you guys so much for watching It's Just Football. We will see you right here, same time, 11 a.m. tomorrow. See you guys then.
It's not about politics, it's about football.
This is a simple game.
We're going to run the ball, and we're going to pass the ball. We just going to play football, really.
How good of a football player are you?
Not just get in and try to spin it. That's all.
I just love the game.
It really is the best time of the year.